I'm talking today with Chris Zantow. I met Chris through Facebook, like I meet a lot of people. He was writing a book called Building the Brewers, Bud Selig and the Return of Major League Baseball to Milwaukee. And he asked me if he could use one of my photos in his book. And of course, I charged him 4.3 million for my photo. No, I'm kidding. And he graciously used the photo in my book, or in his book, I should say. And I'm pleased to welcome to the show, Chris Zantow. Chris, nice to talk to you.
Good to talk to you too, Bob.
So tell me, what got the bug of building the Brewers? I know obviously with your Milwaukee shirt on, and I can see your book in the background there. He's repping, and you're in Madison, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
So Bucky Badger is alive and well in your household too?
Yes.
Good. So tell me, what got the bug in your ear to do the book on the Brewers, and how hard was it to gather all this information?
Start with where I got the idea, because the part about the information gathering is pretty intense.
Yeah, I know.
I was laying around with my leg up. I had a routine meniscus surgery, but I needed to stay off my leg for a couple weeks. And the first thing I thought of, it was in the winter, no baseball, spring training hadn't started yet. And I thought, why don't I dig into some baseball documentaries, maybe flip through some books. And I started watching the Seattle Pilots Short Flight into History documentary. It's really, really good. But it of course leaves off when the team moves to Milwaukee. And I started digging around for books about the move and then what happened after they moved to Milwaukee. And the more I dug, I found a lot of articles where it's just kind of one-off, where they talked about the move and then they dropped off, and they're little pieces, bits and pieces, but there wasn't anything like really full length. And of course, there's a lot of stuff about the Brewers, as you know, from 78 to 82, which a lot of us call the golden era of Brewers baseball, when George Bamberger took over, and then eventually Harvey Keene took the team to the World Series. So there's a lot of that stuff, not a lot about the early years at all. And so I thought at the time, well, maybe I'll just write a blog post or a series of blog posts. And then I thought, you know what, this deserves a full-length treatment, and not just from the move itself, but going back to the fight for the Braves and the Braves leaving town and all the court battles and all that stuff. And then Milwaukee trying desperately to get a team to replace the Braves.
What a lot of people may not realize is once the Braves left, there was that big gap there between the Braves and the Brewers. But you borrowed the White Sox for a few games in 68 and 69, I believe.
Yep.
They would come up and play 10 games a year up in County Stadium, because the White Sox were having problems with their ballpark too at the time. Did you ever go to any of those games, or do you remember those as a kid?
No, but I remembered when I started researching the book, I remembered I'd read about that, and it kind of was vague to me. So I started digging a lot on that, and they had it figured out that they would keep doing it into 1970, and of course they didn't need to because the Brewers came. But the biggest interesting thing I found about that was, as you were saying, they were having problems in Comiskey, and especially drawing fans. I mean, they drew fans up here in droves, and it wasn't even their home team. So it was kind of like for the White Sox, a home away from home kind of situation.
Obviously, living in Wisconsin, it's the Green Bay Packers and nothing else. Even Milwaukee's a Packers town. It's like Boston. The Patriots can win all these Super Bowls, but it's always going to be a Red Sox town. It's the way it is. Do you think the Brewers play second fiddle at all to the Packers, or do you think the Brewers have kind of turned the corner now with their recent success, and it's more of a Brewers town than a Packers town? Or is it split 50-50?
I think it's kind of like an ebb and flow, like you're saying. Like recent success, you'll still see a lot of full, capacity crowds at Miller Park in September. And there used to be, it was almost like it's shut off. You get to the end of August, and that's it. It's like, baseball's over. Now the Packers are playing. If the Packers were good, which they, were, through a lot of the last 25 years, then that was a definite shut off. I mean, I went to games in Miller Park and County Stadium in September where, you count the crowd like that practically, because they're all consumed by the Packers. And even when I was researching the book, I found that in the early 60s, kind of one of the things that drew some of the Braves fans away from following the Braves was that Vince Lombardi showed up. The team started turning around. Packers are good. Now we're paying attention more to the Packers. You know, they played an exhibition game in County Stadium. I don't remember what year, early 60s, late August, and they drew better than the Braves did the following Sunday for a game, and Warren Spahn was pitching.
Yeah, it's crazy how some of the some of these teams just dominate a sports landscape. The Cubs. It's going to be a Cubs town in Chicago. It's the way it is. I know it's divided between that and the White Sox, but the lovable losers finally won, and I think a lot of it with the Cubs though is people going to the games and it's a happening. It's the place to be now that the Cubs are winners again. Before you could get bleacher tickets easy. Now, they're what, $75-$80 a pop for sitting in the bleachers. Give me a break.
Yeah, and they're coming up here to Milwaukee because they can't get tickets down there without shelling out a fortune, in the secondary market.
Yeah, and of course, parking at Wrigley Field is not a lot of fun. There is none. Forget it. I know that, I don't know if they still have it, but right up Clark Street, there's a Catholic school, I believe. That's where I usually park when I go to Wrigley. And I park up there and I'll walk 2 blocks to the ballpark because, most people take the train, the L in, because forget, it's like Fenway Park, there's no parking. And, I was at Yankee Stadium in 2018 and I had to park a couple of blocks away. Luckily, it was a day game because you don't want to be walking 2 blocks in the Bronx at night. It's not good. So tell me, what was the hardest thing to do with this research? What was the most difficult steps in all this research you did? What was the hardest thing for you to accomplish and get information on?
I think it was just keeping myself on track. And I started out, I had this great idea that I'd interview all these ball players that played for either the Pilots or the Brewers in like 69 and 70. And that didn't go so well. I sent out questionnaires, tried to get in contact, and, some would respond and a few were honest and said, that was like 50 years ago. I don't really remember much of that. And so that kind of wound up being a dead end. So, unfortunately I only used a couple of quotes from the ball players in the book. And originally I thought, well, it's just going to be all ball player info. And then I had to backtrack and try to buckle down and go through old issues of Sporting News and dig up through newspapers. Fortunately, Milwaukee had Journal Sentinel, so a lot of that's online and archived. So it was pretty easy to find all that stuff. And organizing it wasn't too bad, but then I got off track really bad with the book, and I started going past what I wanted to do, which it ends in 78, and then there's a little epilogue where it takes it to present day. I went past that. I started writing about the 80s and a little bit about collusion and then building Miller Park. And my editor pulled me back and said, whoa, you're opening up too many cans of worms there. Pare it back down. Just keep it from, the history of baseball in Milwaukee through the Braves, Brewers coming to town, focusing on that. And then, how they eventually became a contender. And that helped immensely because you could easily go off in all sorts of different directions.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like if you do a book on any team, you can go in 48 different directions. It doesn't, even though if you want to focus, all of a sudden you're going this way. It's like, wait, I got to reel myself in, because it is, I know what your editor was saying. It's this, you have all this stuff you want to say, but it's kind of hard to condense it into one cohesive thing where it fits in with your book. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, my editor said, and I get asked this a lot. It's like, is there another book in you? I hope so, but my editor said, you know what? You stopped at a great point. If you do another book, do 78 to like 82, 83. Where they become a contender. Yep. And I think there's a Baltimore Orioles book that's like 79 to 83ish that covers their peak period in that in that time frame.
Did you have you ever talked to Gorman Thomas?
No, he's done all these personal appearances around the state, and now he's selling Gorman's mustard. I think you and I kind of messaged back and forth about that. But it's one of those odd things where every time he makes an appearance, there's something else going on.
I met him once. He's a great guy. He's a character and a half. he was selling his barbecue, I think, at Old County Stadium, smoking a heater, a Marlboro, and yeah, it was Gorman, and he's just like a cartoon character. Because remember, he looked like when he was playing, he was in Leonard Skinner or something, the long hair, the full beard and mustache, but the guy couldn't hit a curveball to save his life. He was like Pedro Serrano from Major League, But if he hit ball straight, go a long way, But and it's kind of sad how his career kind of went downhill after he got traded, from Milwaukee, because he didn't want to leave Milwaukee.
No.
He was, he was probably up there with Yount as one of the most popular Brewers ever, I think, in my opinion, because everybody loved Gorman. He was just larger than life, So, is there a guy you want an interview for the book that you couldn't?
I originally started out trying to get a book contract with a different publisher, and I'll keep them nameless, tactfully nameless. We went back and forth, and eventually, they liked the idea, but eventually they said, you know what, if you can't get Robin Yount or Paul Molitor or Bud Selig himself to write an introduction or whatever, and I tried to get in contact with those guys, but Molitor was managing the Twins then, and I got pretty far with that, but then they went to spring training, and the person handling all of that said, nah, can't do it now, won't happen. So that publisher eventually just kicked me aside, and I wound up with McFarland Books. But man, I would have loved Robin or Molitor or Gorman. I try to get into contact with Gorman. He doesn't answer his mail, so that fell by the wayside.
Too many Marlboros and too many Bud Lights.
Right.
Hell, I think Gorman's older than I am, and I think he's pushing 70. They're all that's the thing. You don't think about it, but now all these guys, all our heroes. Fergie Jenkins is 77.
Yeah.
And I talked to him the other day. He looks great. Yeah, and he could probably still I know he could get me. That wouldn't be a problem. Just throw me that slider and I'm done.
Yeah, but, you and me both.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to deal jelly league. I'm bailing out, man. There's no way I'm letting that thing hit me. It would hurt. But, talking to some of these guys, it's you don't want to see them getting old, but it happens, Yaz is 80 now, and you don't want to see your heroes get old, but they do, unfortunately. Our rock star heroes. I'm surprised Keith Richards is still alive myself.
Yeah.
But time marches on. Unfortunately, we're all getting older. You can't beat it, which is going to lead me into my next thing.
Okay.
What many people do not know is you and I are brothers in one way. We're both cancer survivors, and Chris has was diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer, and tell the people how it came about and how your doctor told you and what your first reaction was.
Well, first I'll say that what you said about being brothers in cancer, I wish it wasn't that way for us. Because you and I have talked, we've got a lot in common, the music and baseball and all sorts of things. I wish it wasn't that way, but if I had to pick someone to be a brother in cancer with, you're a fine choice to be that.
I appreciate that.
And getting cancer is unfortunate and sucks, as you know, and it came at just an awful time. I just had gotten the book out, and my wife and I were going through what we do every year is preparing for Thanksgiving for both sides of the family, and Christmas, and this happened. Like, I wound up in the hospital like 2 days before Thanksgiving, and I knew something was wrong because I'd been really tired. Our anniversary's in October. I slept through it and just felt like garbage, but I didn't know what it was. And I thought, maybe it's a virus, but I had problems before that. And, prostate's, a lot about going to the bathroom, and, your prostate swells and you get cancer. And, and I noticed that, was a problem, but I kind of thought, well, maybe it's a kidney infection. So I went to the clinic. They're like, no, that's, did some tests. No, it's not a kidney infection. You need to go to the ER. And next thing I knew, I was flat on my back, and they, shoved a catheter in me, and running all these other tests, and I'm, trying to get a hold of my wife at work, and, and it's all frantic. And I wind up, in the hospital for a few days, got out on Thanksgiving. But in the meantime, they said, well, you have prostate cancer. And one of the doctors kind of gave me hope, because, it's prostate cancer is one of those things that a lot of guys can just watch, and their doctor can just monitor it, and it never grows, and it never really does anything. And so the one doctor I talked to in the hospital, he kind of went with that mindset. It's no big deal. You do a little radiation, and we might remove the prostate. It's all good, and then you can get back on with your life. Well, that wasn't what it was. And the more tests I had after I got out, and scans and things like that, and then I got that wonderful prostate exam that that's not a party,
Yeah, no.
as a lot of men know. They discovered, yeah, pretty much. It's like, lie on your side. This won't hurt a bit.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's just going to feel really weird.
Yeah, it is.
And, but anyway, I mean, I joke about it, but then what happened through all of that is, the one scan revealed that it had metastasized. So it hopped into my lymph nodes, hopped off in some bones in my ribs and my legs and things like that. The plus side was it didn't get into like any organs, kidneys, liver, typical places it can jump off at. But then I found out how rare it is for that to happen. And as I was saying, most guys, they just walk around, live their life, a little radiation, some meds, no big deal. And what I found is there's only like about 6% out of all prostate cancer patients that are like me, that it's metastasized, and jumped off the lymph nodes. There's like 13% or so. It'll go as far as the lymph nodes, and that's it. So I'm pretty rare. And then on top of that, I have nurses telling me, and, doctors telling me, it's like, you're just too young for that. I just turned 51, and one nurse flat out told me, it's an old guy's disease. I mean, my dad had it, but they didn't discover it till like his mid 70s. And they say that a lot of guys with prostate cancer, something else winds up killing them. They have heart disease, heart attack, stroke, you name it. But that's not what got them. And then the sad and harsh reality that my oncologist put out there, to my wife and I, is that if you get beyond 5 years, you're beating the odds. So I'm working really hard to be the guy that beats the odds, because there are people that do. But the numbers, the stats, whatever you want to say, that's not really in my favor. But
your numbers have gone down since you've had your treatments.
Yes. Yeah. And that's encouraging.
That's a very encouraging sign.
Yes.
And, you take every day, one day at a time. It's, cancer doesn't play favorites. It doesn't care who you are, how much money you have or don't have. It doesn't matter, at least your doctors are honest with you. They're telling, and that's what I appreciated with both my doctor, my hematologist. They shoot straight. They tell me what's going on, and knock on wood, I'm doing well. And I know it was touch and go there for a while for you, because you and I have talked on Facebook, and it was kind of scary. I mean, even for us, my wife and I were just very concerned. And then, you told me the good news that your numbers have gone down and they're getting back to almost normal levels, which that's like, wow, that's amazing, and I'm sure your wife is thrilled to death too.
Yes. Yeah. And as long as my oncologist was really encouraged by the fact that I responded so well so quickly. So that's hopeful that this treatment will last quite a while before you start having to switch to option number 2, option number 3, clinical trials and all that stuff. And I just don't want to get to that point. I just want to do what I can to, on my side, beyond the treatment, to try to reverse this thing and heal myself.
Well, you're not an option quarterback. You're a drop back passer, dude. So, but I've got your back, and I, whatever I can do to help. And I just think when I first found out about this too, just talking to people really helped me. And talking to people that have leukemia, and a lot of people have it worse than I do. And it just, every time I hear that a friend or somebody I know has cancer, it just the chill goes down my spine, because we know what a horrific disease this is. And you look good though. I mean, you're bouncing back, and I'm glad you're doing everything the doctors tell you to do, because you have to, even though sometimes we don't want to, but we have to. They're just looking out for us.
Yeah, and as you know, we've talked before about, I got hit with that diagnosis around Thanksgiving, and then from there until probably early March, not too long before Wisconsin stay-at-home order started, I just, felt like I was dragging a 20-pound weight behind me. It's like that initial, you're getting treatments and all this stuff is new that you're introducing into your body, and your body's like, whoa, what are you doing? And doesn't know how to react. And then you forget that you have cancer. So you pick up something heavy that, you've always picked up, and, and then I'm dropping it. And my treatments block testosterone, so it doesn't feed the prostate cancer. But, with that, there's side effects, like, you're going to lose muscle tone. You're, not going to be able to lift things. So it took me a while, but now I figure out what my limitations are.
I hope you can lift 12 ounces when we get to Miller Park next year.
Yes.
That's a must, man, because you and I, we've talked, we're going to do brats and beers at Miller Park, probably obviously not this year because of what's going on with the pandemic and everything. And of course, that's another thing too. Your doctor said stay home, as my doctor has said too. You and I are both very high risk. And my doctor told me flat out, it's not worth it. I don't want you working. You stay home until there's a vaccine. And I know your doctors have told you the same thing. And it's, you want to get out there, but in the same time, you don't want to get out there with all this crap that's going on right now,
No.
Because this virus will take you and I out. It's not good. It's brutal. And for any of those people that think it's a joke and a hoax, this is not a hoax, major medical man. My doctor went to Stanford Medical School and UC Davis for his undergrad, and he's probably 1,000 times smarter than I'll ever be. And he says, this is no joke, and I know your doctors have probably told you the same thing. You really have to watch it, watch who you come in contact with, wash your hands, the face, take a shower, throw your clothes in the laundry all the time if you go out. And it's just, it kind of, it's a double whammy with the virus and also having, a life-threatening disease like you and I have. It kind of makes you realize how short life is, and you have your preferences,
Yes.
And, like David Lee Roth said one time, don't sweat the small shit because it's all small shit. And, which means translation, don't let people get you down, because you don't need people like that, or people that tell you wrong. The naysayers, we don't need those people in our lives. And I've eliminated it. I know you have too. And it makes it a lot better. We have enough to deal with without negativity. So.
Yeah. And personally, I never get tired of hearing the cautions, whether it's my oncologist, a nurse at the cancer clinic. I do a Gilda's Club cancer support group once a week, and the group leader always reminds us, you guys have weakened, you have cancer, you have a weakened immune system. This is nothing to mess with. Right. And my wife telling me, you messaging me, or anyone chiming in on social media and saying, you know what, you got to do what you got to do.
I know, because we want you around for a long time. You're way too young to have this. And like I said, we have brats and beers waiting for us at Miller Park next year. And there'll be more than one or two beers, I can guarantee you that. And the brats, they are still the brats. Real quick before we go, give me some, you use one of my photos in your book, and I'm very appreciative of that. And give me some of your memories of the old ballpark. I mean, people will bitch and complain about it. It was this, it was that. But you know what? It was like a comfortable old shoe you didn't want to throw away. Give me some memories. You've been there a hell of a lot more than I have. Tell me about County Stadium.
Okay. Well, I'll start with your photo, and I was really grateful to have it in the book. And I put it in, and my editor was cool with it. I put it in the epilogue where I take it up to the current time. And your photo is one that, is showing out toward County Stadium, from, kind of like the home plate. And it shows Miller Park, being built in the background. And, and I touch on that in the epilogue. So I thought that was a really, really cool photo to wrap the book up with, and kind of give it a proper ending. My memories, my dad first took me to County Stadium in April of '78. And we kind of followed the team a little bit, you know, when I was a kid, but, you know, listened to games here and there. But, you know, as you know, the Brewers weren't really good till '78. I mean, other than having, you know, Henry Aaron and George Scott and, you know, a guy here or a guy there that was, you know, pretty good, but they never got to 500. They never really put it together. But that was a great era to start going to the ballpark in, because you know, it started selling out. My dad was, you know, we worked during the week, so we'd go on the weekends, you know, typically Sunday. Once in a blue moon, you know, there'd be a double header, which we don't see that now unless there's a rain out. But, you know, again, a cool thing to grow up with. And, you know, as I grew up, they switched the scoreboard from that old scoreboard, you know, the Marlboro, to the electronic scoreboard. But unfortunately they weren't thinking ahead. You know, it was black and white, and, you know, the animation was pretty good for the time, but then within a few years, you know, you've got other teams sticking in these, you know, monster electronic scoreboards, and they're in color, and, you know, and it just had that, you know, like crappy animation. You know, and even in the '90s when they started the sausage, you know, the racing sausages, it was this crappy animated thing on the scoreboard until they thought, well, we should do this live, put people in costumes. But it was a great place to grow up in, and you and I have definitely talked about that. It had character, it had charm. It was getting run down. It was horrible by the '90s, as you know, you know, because you visited then, and, you know, and then they went through all that stadium battle stuff. I'm not going to get into that, but just a lot of memories there, and especially that peak period between '78 and '82. I turned 14 for Game 5 of the ALCS in '82, and my dad took me there. And it was just a coincidence that it fell on my birthday. But when you're a kid, you think, this is the greatest birthday ever. And I, you know, at this age, I still do. And it was fantastic. There's just a lot of memories there with my dad, and kind of like the passing of the torch, father to son, or, you know, uncle to nephew, or, you know, grandparent to son, or whatever. And then, you know, Miller Park came, you know, they of course tore County Stadium down and put that little ball field in there, Helfer Field. And it's cool. It's great. It's not the same, you know. I mean, it's a totally different experience. Obviously it's high tech, and, you know, a lot of stuff going on in between innings, and the humongous scoreboard, and you know, a concession stand every 30 feet or whatever, bathroom everywhere. And, you know, and you remember you had to walk a mile for some of that stuff in County Stadium. You know, it's that old stadium experience, and it's different, and I like it, but you know, a lot of great ball games have happened there, and I've witnessed, you know, a number of them, but yeah, it's totally a different vibe.
Yeah, I grew up going to Anaheim Stadium. I grew up in Fullerton, and I actually bailed on my godmother's son's wedding in October of '86. I was at the one bleeping strike game where the Angels could go to the World Series, and Donnie Moore blew it. Of course, me being a Red Sox fan, I was with my best friend Wes, and Wes isn't with us anymore. He passed away from cancer, and he never smoked, but it was he got it through asbestos. He was a diesel mechanic. And but we were there, and Wes wasn't one to get excited, and I was going crazy after Hendu hit the home run, and, you know, the Red Sox won, and Wes didn't say a word because we were getting ready to run on the field. I thought it was over. I thought the Angels were going to go to the World Series, and we walk out of Anaheim Stadium, and Wes was not one to show his emotion. He just looked at me and said, "It's over." And I said, they still had 2 games to go, and I said, "I know," because you just knew it. They weren't going to come back from that. And I remember the '82 against the Brewers. Boy, I cussed out the Brewers because they beat the Angels, you know. But you know, playoff time comes, and my birthday's in October too. And you know, the Red Sox have won 4 World Series in the last 20 years, which have been great birthday presents for me. But it'll never top '04. It's just like, you know, I know '82 is a very special year for Brewers fans. It's probably their most favorite year, you know, because they got this close. And it's going to happen. The Brewers are going to win the World Series some year. You know, they got a great nucleus now. Yelich signed the extension. And, you know, he's going to be there for a while. I think he likes Milwaukee. I think he likes the smaller town. A lot of players don't like the big spotlight, which is not a, you know, to slam them in any way, shape. They would rather be, the big fish in the small pond, so to speak. It's less, like a lot of players can't handle playing in New York or Boston or Chicago because of the media. It's just, or Philadelphia, it's 24/7. Why didn't you do this? Da, 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 da. A lot of players can't handle that. And we've seen it. And Yelich you can tell he loves playing in Miller Park. That guy rakes in Miller Park.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point you bring up. He and like Ryan Braun, and you can go back through Brewers history. We talked about Robin Yount. He's here forever. Jimmy Gantner here forever. I mean, Molitor till all the contract crap came up and he took off. But these guys, there's some of these guys that I think they just get a kick out of that culture and the ballpark and the fans and all of that, and they stick around and for whatever reason. Milwaukee and Wisconsin, have that charm and appeal to some guys.
I think it's using your sausage downtown, the Brats.
Yeah.
They're damn good. Exactly. Yeah. They have breweries in Milwaukee? No. That's why they called it Miller Park, But it is, honestly, you and I'm a little older than you, and we come from the same era. You think of you going to the ball game at a county stadium, you think of having a beer, a brat, popcorn, sitting back and just watching the Brewers and screaming and yelling, having a great time. It's nothing fancy. It's not sushi. It's not, tri-tip steak sandwich. It's a burger and a hot dog and a beer. That to me is baseball. And I've been asked a lot too. I said, people have asked me, what do you miss most? And I said, honestly, missing going to Tiger Stadium, Comiskey Park, County Stadium. These places were ballparks. You could smell the old stale cigar smoke in the stadium because it permeated the seats and the field and everything. And I can still smell the Italian sausages from Tiger Stadium in Detroit because they were awesome. And it just smells and the same thing. I could smell the beer and the stale cigar smoke, but it was what it was. They were ballparks. They were nothing more, nothing less. The great new stadiums are great and they have all the bells and whistles, but I think most of us would just like to gravitate back to a simpler time and a simpler ballpark, where you didn't have to worry about, couldn't go into a section like the Yankee Stadium police. Oh, you can't go there, but that's for the high rollers only. It's, I want to take a picture. No, whatever. And County Stadium, you knew it like the back of your hand. You could go anywhere in that ballpark.
Yeah.
And, you can go out to the bleachers. You could, and back, even when in Anaheim Stadium when I was a kid, the ushers didn't bust you very much. They were like, whatever, you're kids. We sat wherever we wanted. Because back in the day, it's like the Brewers and the Angels. They were pretty bad in the 70s. They were really bad. So, but it just harkens back to a simpler time, which we all like.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Brats. I have to bring up your post on social media, that recent post you made about Milwaukee and the smell and the Brats and people were, and I got a kick out of it. People were chiming in and going, "Oh man, that parking lot! I could smell that." Yeah. And that's of course what I grew up with. My dad was a big tailgater, and from being in Wisconsin before that, that's part of our culture. It's a big deal to fire up the grill and grill whatever you can find, and people get really creative, and it's an art form here.
Oh yeah.
And it permeates your senses, that smell. And
it is, but that's half the fun, because my wife and I had season tickets for the Bruins. My wife's a UCLA grad, and we had 10-15 years of season tickets when we lived in Southern California, and we always tailgated at the Rose Bowl. We'd get sandwiches. We didn't do it elaborately, but people who have never done it, they're missing something, because you just pull out your folding chairs, hang out before the game, have a few pops, beers, and have some food, and you're good to go. And then still go in and slam down a couple of brats inside, with the stadium sauce, and you're good to go. And one quick thing before we go, tell the people about the sauce on the Brats at County Stadium. It's hard to explain, but there's nothing like it. It fits to a T.
Oh my gosh, yeah, you brought that up to me before, when we messaged back and forth, and that secret stadium sauce that's been around forever.
Yeah.
It originated in the County Stadium days. They still have it in Miller Park. Every time I get a brat, no ketchup, no mustard, just the secret stadium sauce, maybe throw a little sauerkraut on it, and you're good to go. And And that stuff is amazing, as you know.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's if people who see this, you need to get to Milwaukee and just go to a game, and they still serve the brats inside Miller Park, and the stadium sauce is there. Did that stadium sauce? Do you know? Did it originate with the Braves, or was it strictly Brewers?
Strictly Brewers, and late 70s in there. And I can't remember the guy's name that came up with it, but you know what? And it's stuck, and and now they sell it in stores. And I keep thinking, you know what? The day I get back in a store, I know there are a couple of grocery stores around here. I'm sending you a bottle because I know you love it.
Go to Usinger's and get me about a pound of brats and send them too. No, Usinger's is like the sausage in Milwaukee, and I know because I've been in the shop in downtown Milwaukee. It used to be by I think it still is. It's by the old Mecca, and the old Mecca is still there, and the Bradley Center is now gone. You know, but I like the Mecca better than I did the Bradley Center. Mecca was just, it was like County Stadium. It was like, yeah, I get it. It's a gym. There's not much air conditioning. The seats are tight, but it gives you that feel that new parks and arenas can't duplicate. And it's the same thing, you know, I like Miller Park, but it's not County Stadium. I'm sorry, I'm old fashioned. You know, I know there's much more convenience, but like you said, it's like you get used to it and you miss those days because it was a simpler time. You know, I'm sure you went there with your wife before you guys got married.
Yeah, actually, we had a few baseball dates there before we got married.
Yeah, my wife's from San Diego. We used to go to the Q, and we went to the last game at the Q too. And my sister-in-law, who's probably going to watch this, Melissa, hated baseball. And one day, and I forget, I think it was '95. I've got a picture of her on Facebook where she's holding a scorecard. She didn't want to go to it was July and it was hotter than hell in San Diego. And my wife and I were going to go to the Padres game. My father and mother-in-law didn't want to go because it was too hot. And we dragged Melissa kicking and screaming. She was all dressed to go out, and we took her. Then she found Steve Finley was cute. She wanted to go to every Padre game after that. And then, of course, she's now got a 17-year-old son, my nephew Evan, and we're all baseball fanatics in the family, which is great, you know, because my wife, we met over baseball, and there's nothing like it, you know. Your book, Building the Brewers, you know, it brings you back to that simpler time when they, you know, as we know in Seattle, it wasn't good. I mean, you know, Six Stadium was a dump and a half. It was bad. And without a new stadium, they weren't going to make it. And of course, they went bankrupt, and the Brewers Bud came in and bought them. But it just all harkens back to like what we've been talking about. It's a simpler time. And it's a great read. People need to get the book. This is the book, Building Brewers. Tell people where they can get it.
They can get it directly from the publisher, McFarland Publishing, and their website. You know, it's really easy. They've got a huge sports section. Or, you know, if you want to go to Amazon, it's there too. And
well, Chris, I appreciate you sending me the book and signing it for me. He's Chris Zantow, and I'm going to do another chat with you down the road once we get baseball back, and we gotta find out how your health is. And I know you and I will chat all the time. But Chris, thank you very much for showing up today and spending a few minutes to let us know what's going on in Milwaukee, or Madison, as I should say.
Yeah, and the Midwest.
The Midwest, yes. And there's not 6 feet of snow on the ground.
No.
Chris, we will talk soon. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So good to be with you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.